Hey guys, in today's video I'm going to show you how to install a stock front sway bar in a Porsche 914. Now this will require some measuring, some drilling, some welding, but it'll all be worth it because with a sway bar installed, these cars really drive like they're on rails. Let's get started. My car didn't originally come with a sway bar in the front, so I'm going to add one. And there's a couple of different options for packages for braces. I chose the Brad Mayeur kit, which doesn't force you to cut into the frame. Basically this sits in the gas tank side of the front bay, and then this goes in the wheel well. You have to drill a little bit of a bigger hole so that sticks in there. That's what it looks like from the wheel side, and then you weld around the edges to make it stronger. Here's the brace. And what we're going to do is look down in here, and you'll see that right there is a little dip. And that's actually going to complete the bottom part of the circle. Here's a better angle that shows the general shape of how everything goes. I'm also going to mark with a Sharpie where the hole should be. And now that the holes are marked, I'll just use a punch to make sure that they're in the right place and that the drill doesn't walk. Before I do any drilling, I like to put a few drops of oil on the drill bit so that it lubricates a little bit going in. And now we're just going to let the drill do all the work. Well, I was able to move the wires a little bit away, so just even by pushing them on top of these stays. Now, with this one, because this piece is in the way, can't get the full big drill bit in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill a pilot hole with a small drill bit that I'll finish from the other side. And there it is. Of course, I check the other side to make sure there are no wires in the way. What do you think? And you can see, just with a test fit, that everything looks to be aligned pretty well. Sits where it's supposed to sit. Doesn't interfere with the brake bracket there. Seems like we're in decent shape. Now, when we do the final installation, this bracket's going to be flipped over, and we'll drill a hole that'll accept this size nut in the wheel well here. Now the spec on the center hole here is to drill a 1-inch hole. This is about 1.2. You can use a lot of different things, a step bit. I'm using a 1-inch hole saw. So now I'll just drill the pilot hole, which is punched and nice and dead center. Alright, there I have my hole. Put the plate back on for a fit, and it looks like the hole is in a really good spot. And it fits perfectly inside too, in that little notch. I'll show you that in a bit. But now, what I've got to do is I've got to drill a hole that'll accommodate this nut when we flip the plate over. And now just deburr the hole a little bit, and make it just a little bit wider so I have a little bit of play. And now let's test fit this and see how it goes. The nut now should be able to fit into this. It does, and it lines up perfectly. Okay, now that all my holes are drilled, I've got to get the surface ready and prepped for welding. You can use JB weld here and then clamp it, you know, tighten the screws down for 24 hours. That supposedly works according to Brad. but I'm going to weld it, and that just means I have to get rid of this truck bed liner, whatever the PO put here, and then scrape it down to bare metal. Okay, so what I've done is I put the bolts through here and gotten everything nice and snug and tight, and then I tack welded just to double check and make sure that everything fit. A good tip is to try pulling out these bolts after the tack weld to make sure that everything is centered right, and you don't have a situation where you can't get the bolt out because things slipped. So I've finished welding now, just a bunch of tack weld, should be plenty strong. Don't forget to use OSFO or a weld-through primer if you've got bare metal sandwiched in between these two, just to keep things more protected. I chose to go with OSFO. Also, if you're neat with the welding, you don't have to grind that much down because the piece itself kind of sits on the inside. So it was pretty neat, although I'm going to grind down a little bit just to make sure it sits perfectly. I also welded the inside bracket here to make sure that we had as much strength as possible. And of course you don't really need to dress this up. Then just prime and paint. Here's what you'll need to get the bracket and the bushing together. So here's the 914 rubber bushing, and theirs is different from the OEM in that it has this little extra ridge on top which sits just above this and acts as a really nice stop. You know, you got it in all the way. You need some glycerin or soap to put around the bushing here. Glycerin, I think, is better in this purpose because it doesn't really dry out as quickly or as much as soap will, so it'll retain a little bit of lubrication. And then you just basically take the bushing, the split bushing, and you stretch it on over the bar, which I can show you here, even one-handed. And then what will happen is the bushing will come on like this, and you just keep working it in until it's together. I've already done one side, and it looks like this. So you see the bushing is firmly in there, and the lip is up and over the piece. And just leave a little bit of space between the regular round part of the bar and where it flares out to the square part. Probably about a ½ inch to start. You want to make sure that the sway bar is perfectly centered between the two bushings and the connection to the A-arms. So I measured it out and determined that that's a pretty good place to start. I'll get in the ballpark. So I'll take the open side and feed that all the way through. And now that it's through to the other side, I'll just push it all the way in, check it out on the other side, get the bushings in, and then tighten everything down. Here it is through the other side, about the same distance through. Now I'm going to take this bushing, put some glycerin on it, and slip it over the top of the bar here. Pretty easy, it slips right on. Fat part towards the gas tank. So we'll put some glycerin on the bushing, generous amount. And then get into a position where we can just push the bracket on. Now it'll be easier once I have everything secured, snugged up with bolts on the other side. So I'm going to do that now. Here are the screws with lock washers. And you'll see I've got two 25mm, these are M8, 1.25 thread, two 25mm and one 20mm. That's because the two 25mm are going to be going straight through into the gas tank area, and there's nothing impeding them. And the short one goes into the frame area, and I don't want it to be so long that it hits the other side. Okay, now that these are just finger tight, I should have an easier time getting the bushing in on the other side. Just pushing the bushing on. And I'm just working the rubber in the back against the lip in the front, and there it is. It's in. So now I'll tighten this up and then make sure the bar is equal on both sides. And I measured the distance between here and here, and this side's just a little bit longer than the other, so I'm just going to use a rubber mallet and give it another going to do it. I'll measure this again, and hopefully everything will be lined up, and we'll put the final hardware on. I've measured both sides, and they're pretty much exactly on. And you want them to be equal because you don't want to load the bar, which could have unpredictable effects on handling. And as I snug these up, it's pressing the bushing in against the body. And now let's put the hardware together that connects the A-arm to the sway bar. The sway bar obviously goes in here, and then in here we're going to put the drop link. Now to get the sleeve into the bushing here can be a bit challenging, but you can either heat that up or take a screwdriver and just kind of use it as leverage to get it started in there, and it's in. You can also do both, heat it up and use the screwdriver to get more leverage. And it's in. And once we have this sleeve into the bushing, it's simply a matter of inserting it into the bracket. Then while it's on the bench, this is the bushing that's going to go inside the A-arm. It's a lot easier to put into the rubber of the drop link while it's on the bench. So we'll just take it off and fit it in here. A little bit of glycerin, or a lot of glycerin. And I'm just going to put the screwdriver in here for a little extra leverage. And just get it kind of started in the hole. And it is. There you have it. Looking good on all sides. And ready to be installed. And just so I don't lose the nuts and bolts, I'm just going to place these in for safekeeping for now. And now that we have our bracket and our sway bar, next thing is to get it aligned onto the bracket and the bar. And so I'll just kind of wiggle this in. And I can feel it actually turning, which is a good sign. It's not binding or anything. And then check the spec on the space from the hardware to the end of the sway bar. They have to be exactly the same on both sides, so you don't preload the bar. And that's pretty much it. After you connect it down into the A-arm here, which I won't really be able to do until I'm finished with the rest of the front end. But you get the idea. Tighten everything, and the difference in performance is amazing. So there you have it. The total install time is about 8 hours, but you'll be able to enjoy the better ride in this car forever.